And welcome in as Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com brings you this live Zoom video, and it's also on Facebook Live. I'm Stan the Fan from Pressbox. Oriole left-hander Ross Grimsley with us, and our special guest is a longtime baseball correspondent, columnist. You've seen him on ESPN. He's had an amazing career. That is Tim Kurkjian. Tim, how are you, my friend? Been a while.
Good, Stan. Good, Ross. How you guys doing?
We are both doing okay.
Outstanding.
Hey, Tim, before we get into some of the more obvious topics, when I first met you, you were probably working, am I right, News American?
Yeah, I took a job at the News American in 1981.
Right.
I worked there for 2 months. And then the paper laid off like 45 people. And I was the first guy to get laid off. And I had been laid off at the Washington Star, which had folded like 2 months earlier. So I lost 2 jobs in 2 months as like a 23-year-old, frankly, having done nothing wrong of my own. So after I got laid off at the News American, some reporter from the LA Times called me doing a story on the death of the newspaper business. And he said, "We've noticed you've lost 2 jobs in 2 months." So I said something really stupid like, if I go to another newspaper and lose another job immediately, I'm going to go join the circus. And it ran on the front page of the LA Times. I loved my 2 months in Baltimore at the News American. I loved covering the Orioles for the Star in Washington before that. But mostly I love my time at the Sun covering the Orioles because baseball was king in Baltimore without a doubt at that time.
Well, the reason I asked that question was I remember, do you remember a longtime newspaper guy in Baltimore, Neil Eskridge? You remember Neil? He passed away in the late 80s from brain cancer, but you used to really be perplexing to him. He says, this guy Kurkjian, he's really a good writer, but he writes about nothing. And he meant all the number stuff that you did, like today. Ross mentioned 100 things to still love about baseball. You are not somebody, and tell me if you agree with this, that's easy to pigeonhole as a stats guy or a pure baseball guy. You cover the waterfront. You take deep dives in a lot of different ways. It's not as easy to categorize you as it is some people.
Well, I remember Neil well.
Yep.
And he was a curmudgeonly guy.
Yes, he was.
I kind of admired that he was as crusty as he was at times. But look, I'm not apologizing for anything that I'm doing. I came up with some unusual statistics over the years. And sometimes, and Ross will tell you this, the best part about baseball is it is about nothing. That's the best part. All the quirky, strange things that happen, and they only happen in baseball because the game lasts so long. Not on a nightly basis, but on a daily basis. Only in 162 games can these ridiculously strange things happen. Ross Grimsley, help me here, Ross. Didn't you once say that you owned an armadillo farm and people actually bought that? I think I wrote that in a Sunday Notes column, ... Ross Grimsley, Orioles pitcher, is the owner of an armadillo farm. That's what makes baseball so great, so stupid, is that we hear stuff like that. Ross, help me. Am I right?
I know. No, the thing was, I was in Cleveland at the time. I got released. Terry Pluto was a writer for the Plain Dealer, I believe it was, in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken.
And Terry had covered Earl for a while in Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, of course. So anyway, when I got there, I was at the end of my career, and I started off, I won some games, but then I started pitching poorly, and he got all over me. So I got released. It was back during the strike of 81, I think, and I ended up getting released. Anyway, I see him in the clubhouse in Cleveland, because I went in to see all the guys that were there, that was in Cleveland. And he come up to me, he go, Ross, what are you doing now? And I had my daughter with me. I was holding her hand in the clubhouse, and being a smart ass, I go, I'm raising armadillos. And he goes, really? So anyway, it went on, and he bought it, and I said it with a straight face. Next thing you know, it went on. He asked me, oh, what do you feed them? What do you do? I just rattling this stuff out right and left. So about 2 weeks later, my dad calls me. He goes, what the hell are you doing? I said, what are you talking about? I said, it's in the sporting news. Now, the sporting news used to be the big thing. It came out, obviously. And it was in the sporting news. Anyway, my dad goes, what? Who did you tell it? They bought that. Armadillos aren't up here in Maryland, but Terry Pluto bought it. So anyway, long story short, we were doing something with Jerry Coleman at the ballpark, and Pluto was there, and he said that was the greatest prank ever pulled on him, because he wrote it, put it in the sporting news, and just made a big deal out of it. And he goes, you got me, Grims, you got me.
And Stan, believe me, those stories no longer exist today. With Twitter, with everyone having his own handle, the Players Journal and everything, they don't need us anymore, and we don't jump at stuff anymore because it's everywhere. John Lowenstein, as Ross will probably say, went into a shoe store at a mall once during a season and told the shoe store owner, I'm the owner of the shoe store, like nationally, and I don't like the way that you have these shoes organized. And he made the guy reorganize the entire shoe store. Like, the boots need to be over there, loafers need to be over there, and the guy did it for him. Then when Lowenstein, the funniest man in the world, left, he basically said, I'm not the shoe store owner, I just did that to mess with you. Those days don't happen anymore. We don't rearrange shoe stores, and we don't own armadillo farms. And trust me, I miss it terribly.
Really, it's really sad. You can't do some things. I know they called me and Stan House in 1982 for pulling the pranks on some of the younger players. They said, Earl goes, you got to stay away from those guys. Leave them alone. Don't bother them. We pulled pranks on them that you can't do now. And it's like you said, we miss it. And I think everybody misses it that was around at that time.
Right. And of all of Mike Flanagan's great nicknames, Stan the Man Unusual might be the best one. If you consider who we're talking about here, I know Earl had a name for him, Full Pack, because he smoked a full pack of cigarettes every time that Stan House went to the mound. But when Flanny called him Stan the Man Unusual, that was pretty darn good.
That was. God, we miss him so much.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Stan, I played basketball a couple times, more than a couple times, with Ross Grimsley on one wing, beautiful left-handed shooter, and Mike Flanagan on the other wing, even more beautiful left-handed shooter. And I would just try to get in the lane and kick it to the corner because I knew Ross fading to his left, Flanny fading to his right. It was money no matter what.
Didn't Flanagan play college basketball with Dr. J at UMass for one season?
The famous story is they played they were playing freshman basketball together. Yes. And Flanny told me he pulled up from the top of the key in a freshman game, like inter-squad game, and Dr. J blocked a shot, his patented jumper from the top of the key, went down and swoop jammed at the other end of the court, and Flanny said famously, I knew right then it was time to go out and work on my slider.
Really?
But the story that Flanny tells that only I know is that he got back from the 87 All-Star game in Kansas City, and I just casually asked him, what did you do during the All-Star break? He said, not much. I just went to see my relatives, my nephew. We shot some free throws. So me loving hoops as much as I do, I said, well, what'd you do? How many in a row did you make? He said, well, I made 103 in a row. So I wrote it in the paper the next day, like the Oriole notes, during the All-Star break. Here's what Mike Flanagan did. So the next day, not instantaneously, he came up to me and said, I just wanted to clarify something. My wife told me you put in the paper that I made 103 in a row. I just wanted to clarify. I didn't miss the 104th free throw. My nephew got tired, so we quit. So the streak continued.
Yes. No.
Ross, these are the stories that I used to get that were so good and so entertaining, and we just don't get them nearly as often anymore.
So do you get those? Do you get those kind of? Go ahead, Ross. Go ahead.
Well, I just said that there's so many more of them. With Flanny, I mean, it goes on forever. I mean, he's priceless, and the stuff. I miss him so much. But the stories that can go forever. And when we get around everybody that played back then, that's the first thing we talk about is stories with Flanny.
He was the best, no doubt about it.
So, Tim, when you made the move from Baltimore and became national, was there a huge difference on the national stage finding out the anecdotes or doing what you do, or was it seamless, the change of being suddenly a national sports columnist?
Well, it wasn't seamless, believe me. It was a whole different game. So when you're the beat guy, and Ross knows this especially, I was a beat guy for 10 years. So when you're a beat guy, you're a baseball player. You show up to the park every day and you write every day. When you go to Sports Illustrated like I did, I became a football player because I only wrote once a week. Now the pressure is really on. If you screw up and write a terrible game story once in a while at the Sun, which I'm ashamed to say I did once in a while, you could always tell yourself, as Ross did a few times, I got shelled tonight. I got pounded. I was terrible. But there's another game tomorrow night. I get to start again tomorrow night. That's what kept me going. At Sports Illustrated, when you stink it up one week, you have another week. You're like a starting pitcher now. Yeah. Doesn't get to start for 6 more days. And you're following Jim Palmer every night. Meaning the writers at SI were so good. They were like all Jim Palmer, and I had to follow those guys. So it was very difficult. But what it was good was I often leaned on the guys I covered over the years. So when Billy Ripken, for instance, went to play for the Indians, I had a guy to go to because I knew him from the Orioles. And that was the key of being a beat writer. And when Buddy Bell played for the Rangers and I covered him and he went to the Reds and I walked in as a national baseball guy and I'm wondering, who do I know in this room? Hey, there's Buddy Bell. I covered him every day with the Rangers. There's a different level when you see a guy every day. They trust you. They believe in you, and you can go talk to them without having the awkward introductory period, which happens all the time as a national baseball guy.
Ross, go ahead.
Well, getting to what's going on now, Tim, what are your thoughts? 60 games coming up, with the Major League Baseball and what has transpired before that. I think this could have been done months ago and got this thing started. But what are your thoughts on this thing starting now? And is it going to be able to be finished? Are they going to be able to finish the season? Just give me your thoughts on both ends of that.
Yeah, I talked to a major league manager 2 days ago, and he told me the chances of us starting are 50-50.
Right.
Chances of us finishing are 25%. Now, that's one manager. He might be totally wrong about this. Then I called a very respected, veteran, smart player. He set it at 45% that we start, 33% that we finish. However, there are other people out there who will tell you still 0% chance we start. But I believe now, every day we get closer to July 23rd, the closer we are to actually having a season. So I'm at like now 80% that we're going to start this season on time, with all the people who have opted out, all the people who are unfortunately affected by this. We're still going to spring training or summer camp tomorrow. So I think we're going to start. I can't go any further than that. I don't know if we're going to finish, but I think baseball is determined to make this happen, and I sure hope it happens.
When you think back to how things ended in March, when everybody suddenly said, we can't do this, and they all went home, what Ross just said, we could have done this a couple months ago. It seems to me like the owners really, as I watched how they negotiated, they didn't want to play 80 or 90 games because every day they played, the industry was spending $25 million in salaries. Are you of that same opinion, that this is about what they were willing to bite off in lost revenue?
Yeah, a month and a half before the final determination was made, I had a very good source within the game tell me a month and a half, we're going to play 60 games. 60. That's what the owners want. 60 games. A month and a half before the determination was made. So I think there are some owners who really, really believe we are better off not playing at all than playing 48 or 54 or 60 games with no fans in stands. Financially, we're better not playing at all. But I think overall, the owners said, look, we got to play, but the fewer games, the better. So now we're going to see how this goes. Games, mad dash to the finish. Everyone has a chance. All the games matter. I understand there's a lot to like about this. But sorry, I'm 63 years old. I'm almost as old as Ross. And I like 162 games. And anything less than that is a bizarre, crazy season. But we're going to have to deal with it. And 60 games is what we have. And I'm willing to take it because, frankly, anything is better than nothing.
So as a follow-up to that, what do you think was baseball's mindset in quickly coming out and letting it, like 2 days after the 2020 schedule is released, the industry said, hey, we're doubling down. Here's the 2021 schedule. What was their reasoning to have that out? Do you think they were making a statement like, hey, baseball is back and it's planning to be back?
Yeah, I think there was something to that. And I think this is really important this year, that somehow we get off the ground. We have a soft landing at the end, so we don't mess up the 2021 season. It's one thing to foul up a 2020 season, which we will all understand that this is really nobody's fault. Even if baseball started on July the 4th, imagine the trouble we'd be in at this moment with all these positive tests, and we've already started playing. Imagine how cumbersome that would be. But I think this is a case where baseball is trying to say, we're doing our best here for 2020, but we're going to release 2021 just in anticipation of we're not going to mess up that season also. And I think that's hopefully a good way to look at
it. You know, Tim, with the obviously you got the collective bargaining agreement coming up the end of 2021. Obviously, what has went on now, some of the things I'm sure is going to go over into that. But I mean, I think the owners and the commissioner are trying to break the union by some of the things they're doing. With the future of the game, the changing rules, less minor league teams, obviously the collective bargaining agreement coming up at the end of the 20. What are your thoughts on some of that stuff right there?
Well, I'm really discouraged and really worried about where we are long term here. The wipeout of the minor league season, I understand it, but it cannot be construed as healthy in any way. Remember, baseball was ready to get rid of 42 teams before the pandemic started. And I just don't think that our owners and the game truly understand how important minor league baseball is as the pipeline to the big leagues. Ross, you know this.
Yep.
No way you make it to the big leagues without some of those hard times that you had riding those buses in those tiny little towns. That made you a major leaguer. And I don't think we truly understand, having covered minor league baseball, me for a couple of years, how important that game is to towns, communities, and cities across America. You take that away, it's a really bad sign. And I am so desperately worried about the future now that we couldn't even come to an agreement this year on how many games we were going to play. Let's not forget the season was implemented by the commissioner, and we have no agreement. And we're going to go to free agency. Just wait till you see how bad free agency is going to be. When certain players are turned away, well, we don't have enough money for you. We only played 60 games. And then that free agency period is going to drag into 2021, which is going to drag into collective bargaining after the 2021 season. God, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm so worried about the future now that 2020 is going to lead to worse things from here.
Yeah. The other thing I'm concerned about is obviously there's no minor league season this year. I think you have some minor league guys on the 60-man roster supposedly that they're doing. I know here in Baltimore they're working out at the taxi squad with Bowie. What are the minor league players going to do now? I know the Arizona Fall League. They're talking about extending that possibly. The instructional league, which a lot of teams didn't even participate in last year, that's going to be a very big thing, because just watching and listening to what they're doing now at the big leagues, I mean, getting everybody together to just do fundamentals is completely, you can't do it, basically. So I look at this year, watching the games, it's not going to be baseball as we know it and as we've seen it before. I really believe that. Injuries, the COVID, not being able to do certain things. But my question is, minor leagues, the players, what are they going to do now?
Well,
great question. Yeah.
They're really trapped right now because all they want to do is play. But if you're not on the 60-man taxi squad, the 60-man roster, what do you do to keep getting better? On a tiniest level, you can get better at basketball, go out and play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3.
Right.
You can't get better in baseball by just going out and taking batting practice. The only way to get better in baseball is to play the game on like a significantly high level. And playing an inter-squad game, I'm sorry, is just not the same as playing a major league game. The only way to simulate a major league game is to play a major league game. So I am really worried about our minor leaguers who are going to lose a year of development. And those guys on the taxi squad, what are they going to do? How are they going to stay sharp if they never get a call up to the big leagues in the 2 to 3 months they're playing? How are they going to replicate a major league game when they're playing in some minor league park, waiting for somebody to call, and there's no real competition to play? Right. I just hope we understand how cumbersome a situation that we put our minor leaguers and some of our taxi squad kids in. And if you're a high draft pick and they want to keep you going, you go play on the taxi squad. But is that the same as going to Bluefield and playing A-ball? I mean, people laugh at A-ball at Bluefield. That was an incredibly important developmental time. And if we don't have that anymore, it really hurts.
What's interesting about it, as a piggyback to Ross's question, I remember hearing the thoughts that they were going to extend the Arizona Fall League and play more like a 40 or 50 game season there, and have a simultaneously something in Florida that was like the Arizona Fall League. And those two states now are on fire with the virus right now. So I don't hear anything about an extension or even any type of instructional league, Tim.
Right. And again, baseball is not a game that you can just take up having not played it in a year. And again, I keep going back to basketball, but I promise you, Ross Grimsley could not pick up a basketball for a year. And then we put him on a basketball court, and he's going to make a lot of shots because that motion, that shooting motion is so ingrained that he can do it having not shot a basketball in a year. But you put him on a pitching mound, having not thrown a baseball in a year, and you tell him, throw that curveball like you did a year ago. Hit that down and away spot with that fastball every time. It's really hard to do. The skill required to play this sport is so enormous that if you take a year away from it, it's going to be really hard to get it back anytime soon.
And let me ask you a little bit of a curveball question. Three white guys talking here. During this time of unrest and change in our culture, does baseball ever have a real chance to get back its share of African American players that would play the game? I mean, I think I sort of understand why blacks feel more comfortable in the basketball environment or the football environment than they did in the baseball environment.
Yeah, I think baseball is actually doing a pretty good job about bringing the young black kid into the game, and it's critical if the game is going to move forward. But I'm not sure this is relevant, but I know a friend of mine who coaches a 12-year-old travel team. And it's a really high-level travel team. But he told me it costs $10,000 a year for a kid to play a 12-year-old travel team. And that doesn't count the money it costs for mom and dad to go
Right.
to all of those games. So that's a very exclusive club right now. And there are a lot of kids, black, white, all over the place that
That are excluded from that.
afford to
Yeah.
play the game. And again, I'm 63 years old, but I
Yeah.
think when I first started playing Little League, it cost like $10 a year to play. Now it's $10,000 a year to
Right.
play. There's something wrong with that picture. And until we correct that, we're not going to get a really exclusive group of players. And that's a real loss for baseball.
Do you think the game does enough? And again, it's three white guys talking here, but do you think it's doing enough to get blacks into coaching? And I'll even throw into broadcasting. And when I go up in the press box, it's normally there's more female faces, but there aren't an awful lot of blacks covering sports franchises.
Yeah, obviously, baseball needs to do a better job in every way with minorities in every way. And it's really a shame how poorly the game has done. And yet it understands where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope we start to move forward, not just in baseball, but in the country,
Yeah.
obviously also. And maybe with the protesters in the street and the social equality that we are striving for so hard, finally now, maybe that will make a difference in baseball.
You know what? One of the things that I found, and I saw this years ago, that a lot of people in professional, in the major leagues, they don't want to go to the minor leagues and ride the buses for 10 hours or so. So that eliminates some of your quality players and teachers that want to do that. And that's the same thing with, some of your minority players that come out of the major leagues that could be a big input and help at the minor league level, even at the college or high school or little league, whatever. They just don't want to, the money's not there to pay the guys at the minor league level. You have to be really dedicated and really want to, do that kind of thing, ride the buses, get up at 3:30 in the morning. I mean, it's a little bit better now than it was. I know when I was in Indianapolis as a player, we loaded the DC-3 with the luggage and the baseball equipment, And the buses now, you had big screen TVs, you had sleepers, you had a couple of other TVs on the bus, you had internet service. So it wasn't as bad as Major League Baseball was trying to make it out to be. Some of the facilities, I've 31 years as a minor league coach, and the facilities weren't as bad as they're making it out to be. But, the people have to want to go and do this. They have to be dedicated. And, it's just a special person has to do that. I don't think there's a lot of people now at the major league level that really want to leave that and go into doing the minor league thing, which is unfortunate, but, that's the way it is.
Right. Well, it's clear our players, especially our young players, have changed today, and it's not their fault. We have conditioned them, we have nurtured them to be a certain way, and now, when Ross got to the big leagues, he would say, "Oh my gosh, I made it to the big leagues. What can I do to stay here?"
Yeah.
Now kids make it to the big leagues, and it's not their fault, and they say, "Hey, I made it to the big leagues. What can you do for me now?" It's an opposite. It's a different reaction, and it's because of the way our kids were raised. That on the tiniest level possible, the two worst times I ever got yelled at in my life were my high school baseball coach and my high school basketball coach, and I never forgot it ever.
No.
We don't yell at anyone anymore.
Exactly.
And I'm sure Ross will tell you the way Earl yelled at him and some others yelled at him. That's what motivated him. That's what kept him going, is he didn't want to let down his teacher, his coach, his manager. But we don't operate that way anymore, and I think it's to the detriment of the players.
Sure.
Hey, we've gone on for a while, and I don't want to keep you too long, Tim. But we'd be remiss if we didn't sort of look at this season real quick. I'm looking at the Fangraphs prediction of victories. It's got the Dodgers at 37, the Astros, the Yankees 34, Braves 33. That's before they knew Freddie Freeman was going to miss time. The Rays at 33, Nationals at 33, Cubs at 32, the Twins at 32. I can't stop that Twins at 32 wins. Am I missing something with Nelson Cruz, maturing Miguel Sano if he stays healthy, and Josh Donaldson, and the pitching that they've added? Isn't that a pretty formidable Minnesota club, Timmy?
Yeah, they won 100 games last year.
Yeah.
They hit 300 home runs last year. And
now they hit about 40 of them against the Orioles, I think.
Right. In one game, yeah. And they're better than they were last year. Now, are they going to win at that rate again? I don't know. The Indians are pretty good. The White Sox are much better. But ultimately they're in a pretty easy division. I would have been higher on the Twins there.
Yeah.
I think the question is their pitching better? It's always their pitching, but boy, they can just pound you from 1 to 9 in that order. But it comes back to, I'm always amused because I'm part of this every year. We have to make these predictions on how many games each team is going to win. This is the one game that you cannot predict. That's the ultimate beauty of the sport. We don't know what's going to happen. When Michael Jordan played in his prime, nobody came into Chicago Stadium as a sub 500 team and beat the Bulls. They lost one game at home one year. One. So, but baseball doesn't work that way. It's its ultimate beauty. So give me all the predictions you want, but if you're going to tell me I'm going to follow these, yes, the Twins are this, and the Rays are this, let's just play the games. That's the best part about baseball.
Ross, you got a last one for Timmy before we let him out of here? He's absolutely right. There is no point in making these predictions right now.
Heavens no. Anything can happen. 60 games. You look at the Orioles, they're obviously rebuilding with a couple other teams, but, anything can happen. You go into a 3-game series and sweep them. The Orioles are very, can do that. But, yeah, it's you just can't tell. There's going to be a lot of surprises, I think. Timmy, I mean, I'm pretty sure you think the same way, that anything can happen. And predictions, you can just 60-game season, you can throw all of them out the window, I think.
Right, and that's the best part about baseball is a sub 500 team can have a great 50-game run, 40-game run, even 60-game run. And if you have a great one, who knows, you might make the playoffs. And in baseball, if you make the playoffs, anything can happen. That's the ultimate beauty is that, is that LeBron James doesn't touch the ball on every possession in this sport. Tom Brady doesn't take every snap on every offensive possession in this sport. That's what makes baseball so great is that I'm not saying the Royals have a chance to make the playoffs this year, but who knows? What if they get off to a 20-10 start?
Really?
They're in this thing now. They're in this, and now they look up and go, we don't stink anymore. We're good again. And then that momentum builds, and it only builds in baseball quite like that.
Right.
Hey, last thing though, a Baltimore prediction. Will the Orioles get Yasiel Puig for this year?
Well, there are other teams, as you know, that are interested, the Giants, the Red Sox. And look, if I'm the Orioles, I sign him.
Yeah.
He's an unusual character, but he's a physical specimen. He has great power. He needs to revive his career. And sometimes on a one-year deal, a guy who's had some success comes into a place where not much is expected from the team. He can just sit back and relax and play. And hopefully, in his case, keep his mouth shut and just show everyone he's still a quality player. And a one-year deal in Baltimore can get him a multi-year deal for a real contender, say, next year. So he has a lot to play for. But whether it's the Orioles or not, I would take him if I were the Orioles. They need all the help they can get. And maybe he would say, this is my chance. Show everyone I can play.
He is Tim Kurkjian of ESPN. We really appreciate your joining Ross and I tonight, Tim. Really thank you very much.
Thanks, Timmy.
Well, thanks, fellas. And I hope the next time we talk, talking about real games that have actually happened, like tonight and last night. We need that.
All right. For PressBox, PressBoxOnline.com, I'm Stan the Fan. We'll see you next time.